Viewer discretion is advised.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the New to Wrestling Podcast After Dark. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, we are getting into the one and only, the Beast from the East, Mr. Bam Bam Bigelow. I am so excited to talk about Bam Bam Bigelow. We've kind of been in like a kind of some weird vortex where we've been talking about him a lot,
Mm-hmm.
because we talked about him with Woody from Suplex Wrestling, and we watched the match between him and Taz, one of his most iconic matches of all time. We were kind of in that ECW bubble for a little bit, so we were talking
Mm-hmm.
about him, and I was like, you know what? Like, I really feel like we should talk more about this man because as although Xavier lives in Philly now, he is also, like I am, a Jersey girl at
Amen.
heart.
Amen.
Okay,
Amen.
amen. So I was like, I need to know about this person who is from Asbury Park who is so big. I need to
Mm,
know more about
Honestly,
him. He's just like unbelievable. So when I realized there was an After Dark, or I'm sorry, a Dark Side of the Ring episode about him, I was like, well, we have to watch this. So Xavier thankfully agreed to do this. So tonight we're gonna talk about the life and times of
oh,
Mr.
I'm
Bam Bam Bigelow.
so excited. This man is kind of the blueprint for the athletic big man.
For sure.
People have not seen anybody like him before, and really there are more athletic big men as time has gone on. But they don't come around if they're not kind of looking at Bam Bam, who did it first. So
Without
this
a
one's a good
doubt.
one, and we love just to feed our own little you know Jerseyness. Just I love hearing names and towns and places that I've actually been to or heard of before.
Hmm.
It really makes the story a little more close to home. So.
It's so true. The way I am literally going to Asbury Park tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to the Stone Pony tomorrow
Right.
because, and that's just the way you do a summer at the Jersey Shore, girl.
Amen.
No, I'm the same. I literally was like, again, check the track. Like anytime we talk about Bam Bam Big, I'm like, they're a convention hall. I love that place. Like
No, literally,
it's
literally.
encoded in us. We can't help it. So, but either way, whether you're from Jersey or not, he has the most insane story and he's such an incredible athlete. So let's get into it. And in case anyone is interested, if you want to watch an episode, it is season 4, episode 8 of Dark Side of the Ring on Hulu. Um, so Bam Bam Bigelow's Christian name, his biological name is Scott Charles Bigelow. His actual name, last name is Bigelow, which I love when their names are really like
Mm-hmm.
in their wrestling name, especially because that's such a good one. Like
Right.
Bigelow is such a good name. I
I
just think
know.
it says so much with saying
Mm-hmm.
so little. Um, but the episode opens with his eldest son, whose name is Shane, showing Bam Bam's like he had a handwritten calendar, and that is a man after my own heart because I still
Ugh.
have to put pen to paper when it comes to scheduling anything a lot of times because if I don't write it down, I'm not remembering it.
Oh, same. I am right
But
there with you.
oh my God, it's terrible. So he's showing this calendar, which I also love that they saved all of these. I think it's so amazing to be able to reflect on things like this. But it literally shows like how he wrote like wedding. So he got
Mm-hmm.
married November 15, 1987, which was a Sunday, Monday off, Tuesday wrestling for the WWF. And he had literally signed his contract with the WWF right before his marriage. So he started right after his marriage. There was
Right.
no honeymoon, there was no time for breathing. He just said, and I'm back in it.
Right.
Um, those are like I said, his first few days at WWF, freshly married to his wife, Dana Breckenridge, who we meet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she says that Bam Bam wanted kids right away after they got married. Like he wanted to be a father more than he even wanted to be a wrestler. Like wrestling was just a career to him, but his family was his life. She says he was more excited about having kids than securing a spot at WrestleMania.
Right.
So he was a real big family man. Um, and then we also meet Richie Bigelow, which I love this name.
Same.
Ricci. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
Richie Bigelow. His youngest child and only daughter. Um, and she described him as like a really big teddy bear. Like he was not the person that people perceived him in the ring as this big monster. Like he was very soft, he was very gentle, he was a really excellent father. And I feel like that's like a pervasive theme through the whole episode is the
Yeah.
kids like reaffirming what an amazing father he was, like despite all of the time he was gone, and his persona as a wrestler and everything beyond that. Like
Hmm.
they're so like but he was such a good dad when he was here. um this is really crazy. They get right into it because they ask Richie what her, when you think of a memory, when someone's like, what's a memory that you have with your dad, like what's the first thing that comes to mind? Like not like what's your last memory, just any memory, what's the first thing that comes to mind? And she says, actually it's the last time I ever saw him. And she tells this insane story where she was like 2 years old and she was driving with her dad. And I guess she was like 2 or 3 and she was in the front seat for some reason.
There were no laws back then.
No laws in the 90s.
No laws.
So
So I was like,
she's talking about how she's in the front seat and she goes, and even though I was only 2 or 3, I remember his head like dipping down, like falling and then like coming back up, like as almost if he was like nodding off. And I remember this happening with Eddie Guerrero when we talked about him, how he was like saying that he was randomly like blacking out, like just like
mhm,
passing out of the blue. And we
right.
obviously know Eddie Guerrero's very tragic story. But she's like, I'm literally 2 or 3, and I, even though she was, I can't explain how I could have possibly thought to do this or anything, but for some reason I was like, you need to pull over, you need to pull over, like I have to pee, like I got to get out of the car, like I don't want to, like she's like, I registered that I was in danger even though I have no idea how that's possible because I was three
Two
years
years old.
old.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 or 3. And um so he pulls over, she gets out of the car and she kind of stalls and she's like, I remember him giving me like a really big like toothy smile or like toothless smile and being like, are you okay? Like, do you have, like, he was like, for all intents and still like very himself, like, still a dad, still like not mad that his daughters made him pull over on the random highway in the middle of the night. He was like, are you okay? Like, do you need to go?
Uh-huh.
Whatever. And she was like, I kind of stalled, but then I couldn't do anything but get back in the car. And he started like nodding out again, and I didn't know what to do. But then suddenly he pulled over at a diner, New Jersey core, pulled over at
Amen.
a diner, and she goes, the next thing I know, I'm getting scooped out of the front seat by some man, and put in the back of a gray cop car. And I watch my dad just get arrested, like right in front of me. And I am sitting there and I'm like, they're trying to ask me questions. And I'm like, just where's my dad? Like, where's my dad? Like, I don't know
Hmm.
anything. I'm like literally a child. And she said her mom comes to pick her up and she's very, very gentle about it. And she's like, just you're probably not going to see your dad for a really long time. He really needs help. And she
Right.
goes, and that's literally the last time I ever saw him.
Bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. And
That's
like
crazy.
that is like her most pervasive memory of her father.
Hmm. I mean,
Crazy.
that's unfortunate because also she was so young.
Hmm.
She was so young, and like to have such something so strong stick out. Like I have a memory of my dad like nodding out and getting arrested as like my most obvious memory of him because I was just so young is like
Right.
so crazy. But then we get into kind of the history of how of where Bam Bam grew up. So Dana, his wife, says, he wanted to be a wrestler, but he wanted to be a father more, like I said. But everything was taken away, and we have to wonder, like, did wrestling take it away, or did Scott, meaning Bam Bam, and other outside influence take it away? Like, how did this happen?
Hmm.
Because they were high school sweethearts essentially. Like they grew up in Asbury Park, New Jersey. And she said he was just this street kid from Neptune going to Asbury bars because he was huge. Like she was like he was
Right.
always gigantic. So he could just get in anywhere. He knew the places you could get in with no ID. He would go
Right.
drinking, and even if like he was underage, he looked like a full grown man because he was
Right.
humongous.
Nobody was gonna
So
like
no one was gonna
check.
say anything. Yeah. Um, and she said, for our age and for our crowd, he was definitely the man, which I
Mm.
love. One common thread throughout a lot of these documentaries with like the ex-wives or like, whomever, they all like, even though like whatever happened, I feel like they all have such respect for who they were with. Like they knew what, like, I don't know how to explain it. Like they
Like
have
the
this like
charisma of them. Is that what you're
Right.
referring to?
Like
Like that
that.
they
Sorry, what?
No, I wasn't sure what is the greater point?
They like I just feel like all like the ex-wives or like the ex-partners or like whomever, they always have this like thread of respect for
Mm,
who they were married to regardless of what's happened. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying
right.
it's interesting that like pretty much every documentary we watched, every single wife, like no matter how mad they are, and well, obviously we'll get into it, like or how they feel about the person or the situation, they never like lie or mince words or like there's just some energy that they have, and
Mm,
I feel like only those type of people can be married to like the people that they're married to.
fair.
Like they
Yeah,
have
yeah.
that like I can't explain it, this like energy about them where they're like, yeah, he was an asshole, but he was the man. And again, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, I'm just saying that's like the thread.
Mm-hmm. I get that. No, I
Yeah,
can see that. And part of me does wonder if that's because they're being sat down to talk about a respected person in
this is true.
a field that is outside of their, wheelhouse per se.
This
So
is
I wonder
true.
if they like approach it with that kind of like respect, just because they know that they're going to like be sat down to do this,
Yeah,
or
that's
if
true.
that is just like a person out, like you have to be like a certain kind of person to like hang with this or to put up with this, let's just put it that way.
Yeah, and I feel like both
Because
can definitely be true because I feel
Mhm.
like you definitely have to be like to
Right,
hang with wrestlers. Like you, there's definitely a certain level of you're gone for most of the year and like
right.
I am home. But also, yeah, that's also like knowing that this is you're getting interviewed about this person and
Mhm.
it's gonna live forever.
And a lot of times, I a lot of times they also like they have children with these people. So
Correct.
like,
That's also really true.
I wonder if they're also like are protecting their children in a certain way.
Absolutely. And I respect that. I really,
Yeah.
really do.
Hmm.
I will say that another common thread is that a lot of them are like they to me are like incredible parents, just
Right.
incredible mothers, fathers, XYZ.
Right.
Um, but then we also get into Diamond Dallas Page, who we know, and
Yes. I actually got to meet him a couple when I worked at WrestleMania. So he was one of the people who did like the signing.
crazy.
And he is exactly the same at all times. He is DDP always.
Love that
So,
guy. He
um
also has that charisma that
mhm.
like I just couldn't help but listen to everything he said just like with rapt attention.
No, yeah, I get, yeah. It's a whole vibe with that guy.
A whole vibe. So he's also a Jersey boy.
Hmm.
And so at the time he was running a club called Xanadu, which I love, and he was literally like it was a block away from the Stone Pony pretty much. And
Hmm.
in between Xanadu and the Stone Pony was a place called Quack
Quack
Quack,
Quack, which I thought was
which
great.
is so funny and like what is that? Like just a place? Like a
What
bar? Like they've never
I'm hoping it's a bar. I mean, I'm assuming. What else?
like I was like, is it a
May,
convenience store? Some if anyone knows, please let us know because I should have looked this up, but I didn't. They just they were like, yeah, and then there was a place called Quack Quack.
right.
I was like, hmm? A
I was like,
place.
oh,
Very
we
ambiguous.
just moved on from that one really quick.
Yeah. And then he was like, and what and one day I was like in Quack Quack and I see this mammoth kid and he's we're at the bar, we're taking shots, and I knew he was underage, but didn't matter. He was like a grown man, and we just kind of clicked. And people at that time were already calling him Beast from the East because he was just massive. And he was
Hmm.
he was in his like local sports, he was on the football team, he was on the wrestling team, he was like really making waves in his community regardless, so he was already getting that name around. And Shane, his son, says, this cracked me up, this was before wrestling had weight limits, and he was a 300-pound kid that was able to bench 500 pounds. Like nobody wanted to wrestle this kid.
Right.
Like
Right.
he was so scary.
Right.
And at one point I think he tells a story where his dad like like Bam Bam had rolled his ankle, and his wrestling coach was like, it doesn't matter, just look so vicious and mean at the weigh-in that like so
They'll
basically he
never.
does that.
Yeah.
And he goes the way and he's like, I'm gonna like rip you to shreds, like to his opponent who was like the scrawny little kid, and the kid
Yeah.
like flat out refused to wrestle him and he won. And he's like, my dad just had to walk into the ring and like let his hand get raised. He won with a rolled ankle.
Crazy. Absolutely
Crazy. So
bonkers.
big. He's so big. And he sent him Bam Bam and his brothers used to like jump off of billboards onto like stacked mattresses and like
Yeah.
their mother, Shane's grandmother would drive by and be like, "Look at those crazy kids," and he'd be like, "Oh my God, those are my children."
Right. No, yeah.
Which is so
I love that. I
crazy.
live for that. Where you're just like, oh, look at oh.
Oh hell, you like and he was like he didn't ever say like and she was outraged or whatever. She was like these dang kids like
Right.
jumping crazy.
Different times. Different times.
Different times. Um And so Dana says Scott was actually very quiet. He was the baby of the bunch, and he was usually only called when his family needed the extra muscle. Like he was a very sensitive soul. He's very gentle. He was just
Hmm.
like a big, big guy.
Yeah.
And then we get into Taz.
Love
Thank
it.
God. Love
Love
to see.
it.
And if they didn't have Taz on this, that would have been
A
such a
crime.
flop.
Yeah.
A crime. And he looked incredibly dapper in his like suit and his little glasses. And
I love Taz.
I love that
The
man.
way that
I love that
I
man.
every time he came on, I was just like eating it up. I was like, look at you go. Look at you go.
He
Amazing.
looks amazing. He also, I don't remember, this isn't that long ago, this episode, because this is not the most recent season, but the season before.
Right.
He looks amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Hasn't aged a day. Maybe he's aged like a day, but that's pretty much it.
That's what I'm
He
saying.
looks so good.
Mm-hmm.
So
Again,
eloquent, so
un
smart.
when you remain unproblematic, you age well.
That's what I'm
It's my
saying.
theory, and I'm sticking with it.
Yeah.
You all are bearing witness to it. If you are a decent person, you will age fine. And if you are a horrible person or British, you will age like milk.
Woo! Oh
It's
my
not
God.
my fault. It's true.
Listen,
Look at any of the royals.
well, they're also the most problematic people. That's a vicious combo of the two. But yeah, Xavier's been
100%.
touting this his new theory around the past couple of weeks, but I agree with it. Because
Hmm.
like I'll say like, man, like that person has an AJ, and then he's like, because they're unproblematic, they're unbothered, and they don't care, so therefore they're like, soft.
Yeah, they don't get that stress of like having made horrible decisions they have to pay for, so they don't wear it on their face like everybody else.
So true, so true. I just bury mine so deep inside.
No, 100%. Right. Pandora.
So, oh my God.
Hell.
It hurts because it's true. It hurts because it's
Uh,
true. Help. Oh my God. Okay, so Taz says Bam and Bigelow was all that and a bag of chips. Love that. And he said, I heard so many insane stories about Bam Bam before I even met him, and honestly, I believe every last one of them.
right.
And I literally wrote basically he had some lore. Like he had some crazy
Hmm.
lore, and honestly, goals
Like urban
AF.
legend. I literally wrote down, I was like, he was basically an urban legend in like Asbury, like that whole area. Like
Which is amazing.
what
Like that
crazy.
is the goal. Like
And
I want
also
to be a
some of
mystery.
the most Jersey, like that is probably one of the more Jersey things I've ever heard. Like they just make a myth out of somebody that is literally just like still walking around. Like just
Honestly, amen. And like people are probably like, "Oh my God, there he
no,
is."
literally. Like
Oh
they
my
probably
God.
like, made way when he like enters a room, like, like with that like he enters a room, everybody was just talking about you.
Yeah, you're
Like,
like,
no, exactly.
but
But
like
yeah,
in a reverent kind of
yeah,
way.
but like such an urban legend, such an urban legend.
Yeah, I love that. Goals for real. So his other son, his middle son, who's also named Scott, says there's a whole separate legend before the legend. And he
Yeah,
tells this insane story. He's like, "Yeah, I know my dad was a bounty hunter at one point. I don't know really the details, but I was like, a what?
one more like
A
Boba,
bounty
like
hunter?"
Boba Fett bounty hunter,
That's
like
what I'm saying. I was like, are those real things?
right,
That's crazy. And then we get an audio clip from the man himself, Bam Bam Bigelow. And he says, I was about 18 or 19 years old. You see an ad for Bounty Hunter,
right.
when,
What's that?
never in
What,
my life.
Craigslist? Like,
I'm reading the wrong things because I would eat this job up. I'm too frail for this, but I would love to
mm.
try. Because you see an ad for Bounty Hunter and basically just picked up bail jumpers, beat up a lot of people, and then wind up going to Mexico to get a little girl that was kidnapped.
Right.
And allegedly, He goes to Mexico to rescue a girl that was kidnapped. He has a partner with him. He busts in to rescue this girl. Partner gets shot in the neck and
And
dies.
dies.
And Bam Bam Bigelow gets arrested and does a 6 month stint in a Mexican prison.
Right. Where he like befriends the judge and the judge takes pity on him and then like lets him go.
Like shortens his sentence or something.
Right. Which is like first there's so like which I don't know which part of this is more unbelievable. Is it the like the bounty hunter ad in the newspaper? Is it the like picking like rescuing a kidnapped girl? Is it the 6 month stint in a Mexican prison? Or is it the judge feeling so bad for this random guy that he like shortens his sentence? Like I don't know which part of this is more unbelievable, but all together, I'm just like, no, yeah, that definitely happened. Sure.
It's exactly. It's every single pice of it is so unbelievable. You have no choice but to believe it as the truth
Yeah,
because
you
there's
take
no
the
way
entire thing
anyone,
wholesale because there's
yes,
no way.
100, there's no way all of that can, like, it just has to all be together
Right.
because no one could have made that up. That's crazy.
No, literally. That's the gag. Is like it is so crazy that like it has to be.
Has to be true. I have no choice but to believe it.
Oh, so funny.
Wild. And apparently he also at one point like saved kids from a burning house. Like he was just driving by, sees a house fire, stops, jumps
Breaks
in,
down walls, like
breaks
saves children. Like what? Are you
like a
crazy?
just saves some kids and then he's like, "All right, see ya."
Mm,
What? This
crazy.
man. Then we meet well, we don't meet, but we get to see Shane Douglas, the franchise, which is so crazy. He looks so different to me. Not in a bad
So
way,
different. No, no,
just
yeah.
so different.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so he was obviously, like I said, the franchise. He was a member of the Triple Threat with Bam Bam
Mm-hmm.
Bigelow. Um, so he obviously knows him very well. So he's going to be in the episode more too. Then DDP says Bam Bam one day pulls up to the club after his prison stint, with,
Obviously.
you
Obviously.
know, as one does, with no prospects for a job because, he's lamenting about how, they don't really take ex-cons anywhere. It's kind of besmirched his good name in the
Mm,
community, and he doesn't know what he's gonna do. And DDP says, we're taking shots, we're having a good time, and we start talking about wrestling because I guess at that point, Diamond Dallas Page had wrestled like 3 times and got a knee injury and was out, and so he was kind of in a lull, but he'd gone for it. So then they have another clip of Bam Bam talking again, and he says, I was trying to figure out where my life was going to go. I didn't have a college education. My gift was being athletically inclined, and so I went to wrestling school. And at that time, it was the Larry Sharp School, it's the Larry Sharp School that at the time was called the Monster Factory.
which I love.
Love, really scary, but love. Because I was like,
Mm-hmm.
at first I thought he said like the Monster Factory, that was like a nickname for it, but no, it was like legitimately on paper called the Monster Factory, which is
Mm,
crazy.
yeah.
He said, and the rest is history. So we also are reacquainted with Dave Meltzer, who we obviously talk about often on this because he knows everything there is to know about wrestling at this point. So Dave Meltzer says Larry Sharp was a former amateur wrestling who opened up the Monster Factory. Larry looked at Bam Bam and thought what everyone else thought, and that was money. Like he was a big
Mm,
guy, he was super athletic. Anyone, if they take the opportunity, can make a lot of money off of this guy. Um, so Larry became Scott's manager, quote unquote. That's what
right.
Dana says. She's like his manager. She didn't seem to like him one bit.
Right.
But they don't really extrapolate on that. But Taz says seeing him come out of the Monster Factory, you could see his aptitude to learn. He was incredibly impressive. He was like unbelievable to behold. And that early footage they showed of him at the Monster Factory was
Crazy. I
insane.
was like, and like the things like people like it's hard to impress upon people how large a 400-pound man really is, like really is. Uh,
Truly.
and then to have him be as not even just like agile for a big person, just agile, period.
Period.
The man was doing cartwheels, he was drop kicking, he was like jumping off the top rope, doing all these like crazy splashes. But 400 pounds, like
Yep.
400 pounds, like
Yep.
so just that's so impressive. Like how strong he has to be for every one of those maneuvers that a normal like man has to do with half of the weight,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which makes it so much easier. He's doing effortlessly, effortlessly. Like
It's
what
crazy.
a freak athlete he was.
Freak. And that was like before he'd even been in a legitimate match, these clips. He was
Right.
just
This
at the
is all
wrestling
training.
school.
Yeah.
And it's like, it looks like he's been wrestling for
Forever.
forever. Like it
Oh,
just is in his bones. Like it's
yeah.
crazy. And he was also 6'4",
Right.
which is I think the Undertaker is like 6'7", but which is bonkers. But it's like if you had like Vader's bulk and Undertaker's height,
Right.
it's like hard to like fathom, but
Mm-hmm.
that's how big he was. Like it's crazy. And he's doing cartwheels, moonsaults, like backflips. Like it's wild. Bench pressing people, throwing them into the second row at ECW. Like we've seen it. It's so crazy. Um so then Dana says wrestling for him was a double-edged sword. It gave him his life, but it ended up taking his life. And Larry Sharp, she says, is the one who helped him develop the name Bam Bam, because he was, helped him develop that persona of like the super strong baby face, like Bam Bam from the Flintstones.
Mm-hmm.
So then Bam Bam Bigelow was born, which I think is one of the greatest wrestling names of all time.
Bam Bam Bigelow. I love it.
It
It
rolls right
I
off the
love an
tongue.
alliteration. I really, really
Love.
do. Really do. It's his actual name.
Yep.
And it has like a just like a visceral like the bam bam like
There's an
that
action in
right,
the name. Yeah, like this
right.
is what I'm going to do to you. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's so perfect for who he was, for his character, for like it is literally one of the greatest wrestling names of all time. It fully
Mm-hmm.
encapsulates just everything, this big man, Bam Bam. Just
Love it.
amazing.
Love to see it.
So, Taz says, he talks about how he got his whole head tattooed. And this was crazy. He's like just sitting in a chair, like talking about his, like, just
Like
what's
just
happening with
whatever.
his
Yeah.
life while his whole scalp is
Is
getting
getting
tattooed.
tattooed.
The
Yeah.
whole thing with the fire, the
Yeah.
flames.
I love Taz is so funny. He's like, if you don't have tattoos, it hurts us just as much as you think it does. And
Yeah.
it is his entire head. And
His
you're like,
head.
right. And but it was brilliant though, because it became like part of his like character. So
Yeah.
like he never fell like victim to like the when you leave a company, you have to leave the character behind. Which
That
typically
is a
happens a lot
good
because
point.
that's what happened, when Scott Hall and or when Razor
Razor.
Ramon and Diesel left, they couldn't carry the names any like those aren't theirs, they're owned by a different company. But Bam Bam Bigelow, that's his name. Like that's his name.
That is
So
crazy.
you
Yeah,
can't you
so
can't
true.
ever take that from him. So that's just a cool kind of he kind of skirted that in a time where that really wasn't a thing.
Yeah, wow. I did not even think of that. And that is such a good point because there are so many people who basically, like, for lack of a better term, have like an identity crisis when they switch organizations because they just like lose
All,
the character they've been developing for God only knows how long. And so the
right.
fact that he got to sit and be and explore in that one character his whole career is actually so amazing. I did not
Hmm.
even
It's
think of
very
that.
it's really rare. Really, really rare. Even like the Undertaker, while he was the Undertaker for like 30 years, he was like other characters beforehand. He was Mean Mark Calloway,
Oh
and
yeah.
like
Mm-hmm.
and Sean, even though Sean was probably another one of those exceptions because he was very much so like while his personality came out more and more over the years, he
Mm-hmm.
was the entire time just Shawn Michaels.
This is
Uh,
true.
so yeah, but it's a very rare thing. So he got very lucky in that regard.
That's very cool. I love that. That's a good point. Um, and then so Bam Bam, while he's getting his head tattooed, says, "See, people love to hate, and as long as they want to hate me, I know I'm doing my job."
Right.
So even though I thought this was interesting, because even though he's like, developing this persona as like the super strong baby face, he's like he also says like that they can hate me if they want, and I'll be okay with that. I know I'm doing my job. So it shows like it was like a subtle thing that to me was like, okay, this man is versatile. He's willing to do
Hmm.
whatever. He just is here to do this job.
Right.
And not like in
And
such a derived sense. I mean like
right.
he took it seriously, and whether they loved him or hated him, he was willing to do what he had to do. I mean,
Right.
he's getting his head tattooed for God's
And that's
sake.
what we like when we talk about like because we've mentioned it before how like indifference is the like killer
The
of a
career, a
wrestler.
career
And
killer.
but he gets it. He's like, oh, if you hate me, like that's a reaction. Like that's I was like that I did my job. I've done everything I was supposed to do if you reacted one way or the other.
Right.
So
And that's that. So he shows such incredible potential. I am so thrilled that this man came up.
mhm.
Paul Heyman notices him, and we all know who Paul Heyman is. God bless. So
God
Paul
bless.
Heyman at the time was doing wrestling magazines, and he saw Paul Heyman, or he saw Bam Bam Bigelow, and in his Paul Heyman way, was like, I got to promote the ever living Jesus out of that guy.
And he did.
Oh my God, it scared me. Did you hear that?
No.
Okay, sorry, it's thunderstorming here.
Oh, heard. It just left where me. It
Okay,
it
okay.
just
It just scared the
thunderstormed.
shit out of me. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry.
All good.
So I'll go back a little. So Paul Heyman at the time was doing wrestling magazines and notices Bam Bam Bigelow, and in his Paul Heyman-esque way, is like, I have to promote the ever living bejesus out of this guy because he's
Yeah.
so talented, and I should highlight this man. And
Mhm.
I love that that's just a theme. No matter what Paul's done, he has always also done this, and that's promote people he thinks are excellent and
And
in
yes,
their
that
field.
is that is and it just is like he didn't even have like a huge platform yet.
Yes.
And he's still just like, no, no, no. And like and that is the thing that is just so pervasive like with Paul. It's like he sees potential in people that just like Bam Bam hadn't even had a match yet. And
Not
he
even had a
promoted he
match.
had multiple articles about this guy. And he did the same, he like not the same exactly, obviously, because by that point he was running promotions or being in the wrestling business as a manager, but
Mm-hmm.
he did the same thing for Raven, The Undertaker, Stone
Mm-hmm.
Cold,
Mm-hmm.
CM Punk, Brock Lesnar, Brock Lesnar was always going to be a big star. Vince has always had a huge hard on for Brock Lesnar,
Right.
but Brock Lesnar doesn't become as formidable. A big reason why Brock Lesnar had longevity was because of Paul Heyman. Uh,
Mm.
because there have been many a brute force monster guy that comes through and just kind of like sizzles because there's no personality there.
Oh,
Um,
big T. That's true.
but having the mouthpiece that is Paul Heyman like guide you kind of through elongated his career to way longer than it probably would have been normally. Um,
Fascinating.
but he's always had this eye for people that like don't always get the onus isn't necessarily on them in regards to like WWE's like view of what a wrestler is. Like CM Punk
Mm.
would never have gotten the like opportunities he got without Paul Heyman. He's especially like grow like he was very much like an indie wrestler, which is very looked down on at the less so now because it's Hunter and Triple H, but in the time of like Vince, like indie wrestlers were like they were viewed as like sloppy, dangerous,
Right.
inconsistent, blah
Right.
blah blah. But Paul really fought for CM Punk to get his foot in the door into the new when they rebranded ECW in like 2006 or whatever. Paul brings CM Punk into the WWE through that brand. Um,
Wow. That's
and
amazing.
yeah, and we all know, CM Punk, love him or
CM
hate
Punk.
him, is one of the most popular wrestlers today.
Love that
Um,
guy.
so Paul's just got the mind for it, and he's willing to put uh, you know, his voice where his I guess his money where his voice is, I guess. So yeah,
True. Yeah. I mean, he is really like, he will soapbox the crap out of you if he believes in you.
right.
Like, he will really yell it from the rooftops. He is not afraid to say what he wants to
Hmm.
say. So yeah, like you said, promoted him before he even had a match. And then when he does have his first match, immediately there's this insane buzz around him. People are like, "Oh my God, like this man is crazy."
Hmm.
Um And it's so funny because Dana says, to me, he was just at work. Like I literally I didn't
It
grow
didn't
up with
register.
wrestling. I
Yeah.
didn't understand. I was just like, he's an entertainer. This is his job. Like it didn't process to me. She goes, until WWE came knocking. And then
Hmm.
when he got this insane platform and suddenly he was gone all this time and like, but to me, again, he was still just doing a job that was just a non-conventional crazy job.
Right.
So Diamond Dallas Page is like, 1 minute watching him on some like random independent show, whatever, and the next thing I know, I turn on my TV and he's on WWF with in a tag team match with Hulk Hogan.
Right.
And I'm like, he made it. Like
Yeah.
he made it so quickly, like
Hmm.
out the blue. Um Dave Meltzer says he had the full backing of Vince McMahon, who he literally goes, and I quote, who loved big guys. And we know
Yes.
this is true with the track record. Like he was really
Hmm.
into the big, like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
the big wrestlers, the big bang bang, boom boom
Hmm.
guys.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and he says, and now he had the most agile, Vince, meaning now he had the most agile 380-pound man anyone had ever seen. Like Vince just went like that's for
Yep.
me. So Vince had the best of both worlds right in his lap. And he had like they made him this really like they really emphasized how important he was in the WWF by having like managers.
Yeah. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Again, the thunder was so super loud. I can't believe you can't hear it.
The thunder? No, I can't hear it.
Okay, sorry. So they had managers bid on him. Like literally, they had this like bracket system of all the managers, and they're like
Yeah.
Xing out people he like decided he didn't want to go with. It was like
Hmm.
this whole thing, and he was being like trained and honed as a character to be Hulk
Yeah.
Hogan's tag team partner.
So what they call this, like in like wrestling terms, is they're like they they call it like giving him a push. They are pushing him essentially like to the moon, as in like from the rip with no like real experience or whatever. They're basically like fast tracking him past kind of a lot of people and into the main event scene. The
Mm,
main event scene is, dominated by, like, at this time it's Hulk Hogan, it's Andre the Giant, it's Macho Man Randy Savage, it's King Kong Bundy, um, like that whole like group. Um, so these are people who made their names working in the territory system. And then when Vince McMahon kind of conglomerated everything into one place, these were the people that kind of like were on top.
hmm.
So what ends up happening is, because he's pushed so quickly, uh, and can hang and like can wrestle and like does a good showing for himself, uh, it creates a lot of animosity in the back, in the
Right.
locker room area. Because this is not a time where the concept of everybody eats is bandied about. It is very much
Right.
like, I am on top. I cannot take any time off. Someone will take my spot. I will not be on top anymore. Like, there can only
Hmm.
be one. And like, people did not like Bam Bam. So,
Yeah, and that makes sense to me. I mean, I don't agree with it, but I understand it.
yeah,
Like, I mean, you worked your whole life to get into this place. Even like, DDP, who obviously bears no ill will towards him, but he's like, I literally gave it a shot, got injured, couldn't do it. And then the next thing you know, like some guy he like offhandedly mentioned it to over drinks
right,
is like now with the WWF wrestling with Hulk Hogan. Like it is kind of, it's insane.
right.
Like, but
Hmm.
it's not like unfounded
No,
because he's
he's
so
that talented.
talented. Like
Yeah,
he's incredible. So it's
he's
not
that
like
talented and willing to put in the work. So it's not like,
right. And I think this is kind of like the old guard that we were talking about with Robert Martyr, where it's like, some people didn't want to teach people who were really talented or didn't want to support people who were really talented because you were taking their meal ticket. It's like, I don't want this
right,
extremely talented person to take my spot because then I'm never going to eat again.
right.
It's
Because you don't
it's
wrestle,
very
you don't get paid, especially back then.
full on.
Um,
So Dana says, at that point he was so booked and busy, I saw him literally 10 times a year because his career just like took off.
Mhm.
And there's an audio from Bam Bam that says early days of WWF were 60 days in a row, main event in front of a sold out crowd every single night. And on the weekends we would do two shows. So it was really life in the fast lane.
Mhm.
But Dana says when he was home, he was normal. He was just a regular guy, an amazing father, spent time with his kids. Like he at this point seems to be really balancing to the best of his abilities work and family life.
Mhm.
Shane Douglas says, it took 11 years for me to get the belt, and I understood what it meant by that time. Bam Bam immediately was thrown into the spotlight. Like he didn't know really like what it took to get there and the responsibility of holding the belt and like what it means to people. And Dave Meltzer says he never had to work his way up and it created a lot of jealousy, like you said. And then this is when they have I guess it was like the main match at I don't remember if it was WrestleMania, but it was at MSG and it was Bam Bam Bigelow versus Andre the Giant,
Yeah,
which is crazy.
which is crazy.
Because
Yeah.
Bam Bam Bigelow is huge, and then there's Andre the Giant, who is literally
A league of his own. A
a
league of
league
his
of
own.
his own, always will be.
Mhm.
Like, that's crazy.
Right.
There'll never be another Andre the Giant, and even I know
Correct.
that. And Andre the Giant literally tries to kill him basically at Madison
Yeah.
Square Garden in front of a sold out crowd at the main event.
Yeah, he was like really really going after Bam Bam. There's working stiff and then there's just beating the crap out of somebody and he was just beating the crap out of somebody.
Yeah, and I guess like it was really hard to watch, like, at one point on because you know me, and when they put their necks around the ropes, like it really just I can't do it.
Mhm.
Um, like Andre the Giant is literally like choking him out on the ropes, and apparently, like, Bam Bam Bigelow said he was all in my ear, like, I'm literally like, oh man, please don't let me die in front of all these people. I really don't want to die here in front of all these people, and
Mhm.
Andre's in my ear, like, um he said he was like, you're too cocky, this is the way it is, like you're still too green, like you're about to like learn a lesson, like you're about to
Right.
learn what it's like really like you need to be taken down a peg, like. And I think it's crazy because Andre the Giant to me, like, he's so revered, and I can't imagine Andre the Giant choking me out and in my ear like, you're gonna learn today, bitch,
Right.
like you're gonna learn
Yeah.
today, you're a little
Mhm.
too green for this, like, how about I turn you red by choking you out on this rope, like I can't imagine.
Yeah, and I was like maybe that's cuz most people's association with Andre the Giant comes from the Princess Diaries and that's
Princess Bride.
Princess Bride. You're right, right, right. That was just a slip. I love the Princess Diaries.
Me too, I just wanted to mention it because I love it.
It comes from the Princess Bride, and it's not. He is. That is not the man.
No, no, no. And I think that's fully me. Again, hashtag nude wrestling. That is my introduction to him, except, my
But that's most
dad,
people's. It's not
yeah,
like
my dad was like, no, Andre the Giant was like the biggest, scariest, like, he was a big scary.
he was an attraction. Like it was like
Yeah.
a circus coming to town when Andre the Giant was there.
Yeah. So wild. So they have that match. Obviously, Bam Bam Bigelow gets his butt handed to him. Dana says they were letting him know he had to pay his dues because it's not really your time yet.
Uh-huh.
And that match was so crazy, and so it affected Bam Bam Bigelow so deeply that he actually leaves the WWF after this match.
Right.
And he basically goes independent, and then he is offered a very lucrative contract to wrestle in Japan, which I feel like is like the hero's journey for a lot of wrestlers. Like that kind of feel like some of my favorite wrestlers have that arc of like their independence and they're like wrestling in Japan, then they like, I don't
Hmm.
know, it just kind of feels like that.
Well, there are like kind of like certain areas of the world that are like just kind of like hubs for wrestling.
Yes, for
Like
sure.
obviously like Mexico is one of them as
Right.
far as like lucha libre is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
America, obviously, that's all of the territories, the WWF, the AEWs, the
Yes.
WCWs, blah blah blah. Japan, which is like there's like the big one is New Japan. There's others also. But it's just another like just hub of wrestling. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
if you want to like um wrestle like lucratively and not have to literally travel all over America. You know, your best bet is to go to one of these places that has kind of like larger promotions that can kind of support that sort of thing. And Japan is just like one of those places. And it's one of those
Yeah.
places that's like notorious for just being really like tough to make it in.
Mm,
So a lot of people like go to Japan to kind of like sharpen their teeth and come back.
right. And that's what I feel like I mean, like it's kind of that samurai journey where it's
Hmm.
like you have to go meet with like certain masters. And so like maybe you like Eddie Guerrero is like he kind of got his legs in AAA. Like
Hmm.
and then was able to like he was in ECW and then went to WWF. And then like other people it was like they went to New Japan and then they went
Hmm.
to WCW and then like it
Right.
almost feels like just like who you choose your master to be and not actually because there's money involved and
Right. It's an order. Yeah,
stuff,
you know.
but it kind of sometimes feels that way where it's like I
Hmm.
went to like you said cut my teeth at like in
Right.
Japan. It just
Hmm.
always fascinates me. But eventually after he feels like he's a little more seasoned, he has a great run in Japan, he works his way back to WWF. And they have a little interlude where they have Shane showing some of his costumes. And this is crazy. They had like it's like this like collar flame thing
Hmm.
and it has literally like electrical things like threaded throughout it and it could shoot like fire, like sparks and
Pyro,
fire.
yeah.
What crazy
Hmm. I
for the times. I mean, I
well,
just feel like
that and
that's
also it's just like the way I would be terrified that that thing was going to catch.
oh, thank
I
God
could
he's
not.
bald. Could you imagine if I had hair in that thing? There's no way.
Game over.
No
No, thank
way.
you.
That's crazy. It was just fascinating. He goes, yeah, this was for his second stint in the WWF, his second
Hmm.
run. But he ends up booking WrestleMania 2 against, or no, I'm sorry, WrestleMania
11.
11. I put
Hmm.
the 2 and I thought I did like Roman numerals.
I gotcha. I
WrestleMania
gotcha.
11 against Lawrence Taylor,
Yeah.
which Shane says was the most media frenzied time in my dad's career because Lawrence Taylor was
Of
a
the New
football
York
player.
Giants. Yes.
Yes. I was like, I didn't want to get this wrong. Sorry, sports.
No, no,
Um,
yeah, and it's one of those things that like WrestleMania is very known for is its crossovers as far as like the celebrity world and wrestling.
yes.
That's kind of really started with WrestleMania, the like early ones with like Mr. T and Cyndi Lauper and
Right,
Pamela
right, right, right.
Anderson. But this is just kind of a continued tradition. The general point being that it puts wrestling in front of eyeballs that would not have normally ever bothered to pay attention to it.
Right.
So it works out for them, and then usually the celebrities just like they like it and they want to have a good time and blah 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 blah
I
blah.
get it.
So everybody wins.
I would do that. But yeah, it's funny Dana is like and it's funny because he's the New York Giants and,
Hmm.
this is New Jersey is both Jets and Giants territory. Um Dana's like, that was Scott's idol. He could not be more thrilled to wrestle
Right,
against him. It was so crazy, such an honor. Like, it's just, he's like, oh my God, I'm wrestling against Lawrence Taylor. Like, that's
right.
crazy. Dave Meltzer says, like you said, it was really a match for the general public, not necessarily wrestling fans. And it was like media, like he said, circus, like promoting this
Right.
match of like, the New York Giant against the Beast from the East. Like, it was this,
Hmm.
crazy thing. Bam Bam says business was down and we needed a home run and Vince picked me because I love this. I was the only one who knew how to take chicken shit and make it into chicken salad.
Yep. And we know this because
Crazy.
this is the like these are the years that in the next like we're in 1992, so in the next year, Paul Heyman's going to start working at Eastern Championship Wrestling. In the next 3 years, uh, Shawn Michaels is going to become a solo wrestler. Diesel is going to become a main eventer. Scott Hall or Razor Ramon is also going to become an Intercontinental Champion, and then they're going to leave. There's just so much like this is the years like from 1993 up until like 1996 were really kind of like a like wrestling had reached its like peak.
Right.
We are just past the like the the height of Hulkamania. We are about to hit the steroid trials.
Right.
And so we're just like in this time where like the product was very childish. It was very insulting to the intelligence. And so this is like unfortunately the time that Bam Bam was kind of like the main eventer in. Not due to anything he did, just kind of this is the time and the way that
Product
the
of the
business was
times.
going. Yeah. Um, but he's not incorrect in that I don't think anybody else at that time could carry a match, one with somebody the size of Lawrence Taylor, and to like when you're with somebody who's not from the wrestling world, like you have to carry them, and you need somebody who
It's
is
so true.
freakishly athletic to make that other person look good or make it look at all believable for the crowd live and on TV.
That's so
So there was a
true.
lot of trust kind of placed on Bam Bam.
Yeah. And that makes sense. You're so right. Um, then we get an audio from Bam Bam said that the only problem working with Vince McMahon is that if you get hurt, there's no sympathy. He wants you to work, and it's really hard to do because your body can't take that type of punishment,
Yeah.
which
It tracks
tale as old as time.
even in JR's book, he mentions not to obviously such a degree. JR was not a wrestler. Um, but he mentions that like Vince just like is very much a like bravado kind of guy. Like he doesn't have time for emotions. He thinks they're weak. It is very much like a everything is business. If it's costing me money, can't have it. Like what's the bottom line? Let's keep things
Mm-hmm.
moving because we got to keep things moving.
Mm-hmm.
So he had no qualms about like, oh, like you're hurt or like you don't want to wrestle. Okay, next. And like he would just use and abuse somebody else's body. Like
Right.
so, and that's kind of the name of the game, and that's why people were so terrified uh to not wrestle
Yep.
because they knew like they would be replaced.
Yeah.
And that's the environment that he fostered. Like that was his like, and he will be the first, and Vince will like be the first one to admit it because
Yeah.
he knows that that competition creates a better product, quote unquote,
Right.
or at
Yeah.
least he keeping the people's like hungry is beneficial to him.
Right. Yeah, for sure. He has that like gladiator mentality for
Yeah,
sure. And he has no right to, but whatever. Um, and this I thought was like it's one of those things that's obvious, but you don't really think about. DDP is like, I mean, every time he sits in a chair and then stands up, he's just squatted 400 pounds.
right,
And like it's one of those things you just like it's obvious, but you don't really think about. And he's like, I mean, and that's just sitting and standing, let alone throwing your body around the way that he does. And he's like, and that's a lot of wear and tear on your knees, your back, your neck, your shoulders, like just even being that large,
correct,
like that and doing things that athletic, like he's like you said before, like he's throwing around almost 400 pounds.
right.
Like that's you're going to give out a lot faster than a smaller guy is going to.
Right. And did you mention he's like you're not gonna feel it at first.
Yeah,
And then it's gonna catch up with you like all of a sudden. Like and that's you know,
right. Um yeah, I think Dave Meltzer is the one that says, smaller guys they can take it for a lot longer because they're not as heavy and like
right.
they don't have as much and then but bigger guys like they just it's like a lot more weighing on them.
Yeah, it's a lot more wear and tear.
Yes. So Dana says, I never worried or stressed because that was his job. He was an entertainer, and I was too young to think about the lifelong lasting effects it would have on his body and mind. But he knew that if he was out and injured too long, someone would take his spot, and that was a no-no. So, like you said, I mean, like and I think Taz says this also, like he had a family. Like he had a family he was supporting. At the time, he had his two sons. He did not yet have his daughter, but he
Right.
has a wife and two kids
Right.
and this is their meal ticket. Like
This is how they
like
eat.
this is how they eat. DDP says pain pills were so normal that no one thought anything of it. It was just like, oh, like hey, like Dallas, you got any Vikes? And you just gave it to your boy because he needed them. He had to wrestle, and you're just like, yeah, of course. Like they
Right.
didn't know at the time, which again, tales of all this time. We've talked about this so many times. It's like it's so unfortunate. And Dana says, Vince tested for weed and steroids basically. But if you had a prescription, then you're good. So like no weed, no steroids, quote unquote. But also if you had a prescription for literally anything, you were fine.
Right.
According to that's what she says. Um, Shane Douglas says wrestling and the pharmaceutical industry went hand in hand. Like as pharmaceuticals came up with like better, more effective pain meds, like wrestling just got more like entangled in it and it just
They
kind of
just had
like
more
grew
access to
together.
it. Like
More access,
as
yeah.
wrestling got like bigger, they had more access to like medical professionals that would kind of just placate all of the wrestlers. You know what I
Right.
mean? So,
It's so crazy. Taz says that's why so many of my peers left us way too early because of addiction, especially to pain pills. It was just too easy. And Dana says Bam Bam was actually diabetic, which I did not know. So he had an endocrinologist, but that's not a pain management doctor. And he would be like, "Hey, I need perks, I need Vikes, I need Oxy, I need something to keep me going," and he would get it like very easily because she says I think this later that the doctor was a fan of his
yes.
and would just keep pushing and pushing and pushing the pills on him because like he wanted to see him wrestle. And I think they talk about this later, but we can just talk about it now too. But I think like at one point he's literally training like or trading prescriptions for like
Right.
autographs and tickets
No,
like to
yeah, that's what I have
doctors.
here. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, yeah. Which so like that's what it is. And like the wife, she's like, she's like, these are medical professionals. She's like, you're drug dealers. That's you're a drug dealer. You're not.
She was so real for that.
Which is, and it goes back to the steroid trial like episode where
Yeah.
we knew that we had doctors that were not up to snuff and were
Mm,
just kind of on whatever payroll was going to, you know, get them the most money. It didn't
right.
really medical advice was not a factor. It was uh I'm doing like I don't know. There for me it feels like you get like the sense of like I'm one of like the boys by doing this thing for all of
Of course.
them,
Yes.
and
Oh
you
my God,
like
for sure.
and it's just like how crazy is that to just like throw in your like 12-year medical degree and just be like, no, but I like that guy.
It's really crazy.
Like that's crazy.
No morals, lawless. It's the you see it even too with other professional sports, like athletes and stuff. Like, oh, I'm like this basketball player's like private doctor, like blah blah, blah. And you just like don't even know like what they're or this football player, like the people
Mm-hmm.
it's the relationships that professional athletes like have with their doctors is so bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
And I get like there's a thing of like it's hard because you're a very famous person and so you can't just like go to
A
what
regular
who
doctor or
a
whatever.
regular doctor because like you have no idea but also like the abuse of power is so crazy
Right.
in so many ways.
Right.
That's a whole other thing. But
Amen.
we also know at this time that it's already been like proven that opioids are extremely addictive because we find that out in the steroid trials where he's like it's technically not anybody's fault. It's the doctor's fault for not pulling or the FDA's fault for not pulling like a drug that is obviously addictive. There was that whole thing. But so
Right.
we already also know that they're extremely addictive at this point. But
Mm-hmm.
because literally Dana says they might as well have just given him heroin in a bottle. That's basically what it was.
Right. Yeah.
Crazy.
And they were talking about like the size of the bottles that they were like giving him were just like hundreds of pills.
He said like 300 in a bottle. I can't even fathom 300 pills.
What bottle are you like? What is that? A mason jar? You're crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah, it's very sad. So his obviously he's getting into pills via his endocrinologist. And then in 1995, 3 years after he had returned to the WWF, he decides to leave and go to ECW.
Correct.
Um, so Scott says he liked that it was more local to his family. So his son Scott says it
Right.
that Bam Bam liked ECW because it was in Philly. So it was
It
more
it
local
was an hour
to
drive. It's
yeah,
it's an hour 20 like max.
yeah. And Shane, his other son, says he knew he had a commodity. He didn't take his character off. It was literally tattooed on his head, like you said. So
Right.
he got to just like ride that train, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they're the two boys are talking about how insane the ECW matches are, which we know. People getting
Right.
thrown through tables, people like, falling from the
The
rafters,
set on fire, blah, blah. Yeah, yeah.
we've
We know.
seen it. And then Shane tells a story where he was literally at the age of 10 or 11 punched in the face by a grown man, a drunk grown man,
Yes,
just
by a
at an
drunk
ECW
ECW
show.
fan. Yeah.
Just
Uh,
walked up, punched his kid in the face. And he goes into the locker room and he's like, I don't even think I had to say anything. I think my dad just saw me and is like, what happened? And he's like, I don't know, some guy like punched me in the face. And Bam Bam's like, find him. And so Bam Bam finds him and escorts him to the back for a quote unquote conversation. And Taz goes, yeah, the man was brought to the back for a quote unquote conversation. I witnessed this quasi conversation and I will never forget it.
right. I'm sorry, but I would do the same.
Uh, Thank
I
you
would do
so much.
the exact
100%.
same. First of
Don't
all,
you
like, what
dare.
kind of man are you to deck a 10-year-old child square in the face? And
Uh-uh.
and boy did you fumble that bag, because not
Mm-mm.
only that, like, Bam Bam Bigelow's kid,
You're stupid.
you fucked up. You're
Mm-hmm.
so dumb.
You're
Like,
so dumb. And
you were
that's
so
that's
dumb for that. Like,
that
first of all,
karma
like,
is crazy.
I was like, because like it's horrible enough. Like, the thing itself is horrible, point blank,
Period.
period.
That's it.
But the comeuppance that you happen to hit a wrestler's kid is
Oof.
truly just, you can't make that up. You cannot
No.
make that up, because
No.
is that is comeuppance. I love that.
Energy for real. Honestly, I knew you would feel the same way because I was watching this and I was like, I literally don't feel bad for that person even
No,
in the slightest.
not
Like,
even a little
what
bit.
the
Uh,
is wrong with you?
no, I hope he left haggard. I hope, like, unwell. How I
Sick.
hope he left.
Broken
So,
face. So yeah, I guess like all Shane heard was, so you want to hit kids? And
right.
just he goes, and I knew he was getting the life smacked out of him. And Taz says, I don't know how else to put it. It was very bad. And then he laughs and goes, I'm sure everybody's okay now.
Mm,
I don't care though. I don't
I
care if
don't
he put
care.
that man. I'm gonna be so real. Don't care if that man was put in the grave that night because you
Punching a
don't you
10-year-old in the
ever.
mouth?
You are
That's
crazy. I
crazy.
don't care if they're at the ECW show or not. Like that is not that
No,
behavior is icky boo. No, don't like.
don't
You got
like.
what you deserve. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Um so Taz says you had to be tough to make it in our company, and Bigelow was a tough guy. He started to really come into his own, and we weren't just trying to. Oh, I love this too because he gets a little defensive of ECW. He goes, "We weren't just trying to hurt each other at ECW. Like, despite popular belief, we weren't just trying to hurt each other at ECW
He's like,
what
we were
we did,
professionals.
yes, what we did in the ring can only happen because you trusted that other person with your life. It came from a really acute building of trust with
Right.
another person. And this is when he talks about the infamous match between Bam Bam Bigelow and Taz at Convention Hall.
Mm-hmm.
Girl. Okay, so as if you've been watching the show, you know that
I love that
we
they went into this because I knew you were going to eat this part up.
I did. Okay, but I had mixed feelings about this and I would love I almost I had a thought. I almost messaged Woody today to ask also what he thought about this because I love as a newer fan a peek behind the curtain. I love to know like how things are done, what like but
Mm-hmm.
does it ruin because obviously we're gonna get into how they do the famous like through the ring. But does it, as like a fan, like a lifelong fan, does it ruin it for you in any way, or you also want to see this type? Like you also want to know,
No, not in this day and age. Not in
right? That's what
2024.
I
Like,
figured.
um, uh, because wrestling as a whole has very much been kind of subjected to the whims of the internet, where like
Yes,
there aren't really that many secrets anymore, and like that sort of, like, I don't really feel like that stuff needs to be super
right,
protected. Had, at the time, like, maybe I would have cared more, but
right.
I'm more curious than I am, like,
don't take the magic away.
Yeah,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
I figured that would be the general feeling, especially because it's not like it happened last week on Raw. Like this happened
No.
30 years ago, basically.
Right.
And this is from what I understand, one of the first times anyone's talked about it. Like I don't think I couldn't
No, I
figure
don't
out
think
how
so.
they
And you
did
can
it.
tell by the way that Taz reacts to it.
Yes, which I love, and that's why what made me think about it. I was like, I wonder if like people do feel this way, like people who are lifelong wrestling fans, like feel because
Some do.
basically
Some really
Taz,
like feel like kayfabe or like keeping the illusion, whatever, like
yes,
should
yes, yes,
be like, upheld. Um,
right.
but we just don't live in that time anymore. Like
Yeah, and again, it's so far gone at this point.
right.
It
That's what I'm
happened
saying. We
so long ago, and it's iconic whether you know the truth or not.
right.
That's the best part. But yeah, Taz has this moment of like, I feel dirty talking about this on camera. I'm so old school. It's like
Right.
fucking ridiculous or whatever
Yeah.
he says.
Hmm.
I love him so much. So yeah, he talks about how so Paul calls Taz and is like, Bigelow's gonna beat you for the belt, and he's gonna put you through the ring to do it. What do you think? Because and he imitates Paul like so well. He goes, "What do you think?" Or like whatever, and it like
Yeah.
really took me out. I love him so much. And Taz goes, "The first thing I saw is I'm gonna die. I am going to die." And he talks about what goes into the construction of the ring, which I did was dying to know because I am always when they are on that ring, I'm like, "What is this made of?" Because sometimes it feels like plywood and a dream, and other
Hmm.
times it feels very secure, and it's kind of a combo of both of those things.
Right.
Um, but it's a steel frame with like it's like a steel
This
frame
is
and then it
I
has
like literally have always wanted to explain this, and they did it in such a great way. But
I
continue.
know. Oh my God, thank you. It's like steel like beams through it. Then it's kind of like thick wooden boards,
Like yeah, like
thick
plats.
thick like plats. Then it's kind of a cushion not quite as thick as a mat,
Hmm.
and then it's the canvas.
Right.
Which is crazy. There's because the way I don't know. Like it just feels like both so secure and so unstable at the same time
Hmm.
that it's just like it really is. It's like steel beams, some wood, and a cushion.
Yeah,
Like
that's why
that's
people
literally it.
like that's why we like wrestlers take such umbrage when they're like, it's fake. I'm like, fall on that. Fall
Uh,
on that. Like go ahead, like
I wouldn't even want to lay on that. Like
fall
that's
on that. Like literally just like
crazy.
stand there and throw yourself backwards as hard as you can. Go ahead. Like just and see if you don't like knock yourself out or knock the wind out of you. They take such offense to it because it's like it's it's wooden boards. It's wooden boards, and then the ropes are steel cables. It's
No,
not none of it is cushy. There is nothing
nope,
like soft about it. Other
no,
like yes, you're not literally like closed fist punching each other in the face, but like there is no fake way to fall. You know what I
no,
mean?
no.
Like there is no like
There's like a
you
safe
just
way to fall,
you
but
just fall.
you
Like
just
and
fall.
like that's why a lot of people like a lot of wrestlers like are so like offended by it because it's just like but
I
it's
would
not
be so
but the general public
outraged.
doesn't know that that's what it's made out of because when you're
It,
looking at it on like TV it looks like it's real like bouncy but like
well,
wood does that like
that's what I was gonna say. I was like, the thing that gagged me was that I'm always like the bounce back is so crazy, but it's like you're bouncing off of wood and steel. It's not like there's springs under it, and even if there were, you're
no
still ow. Like I don't know.
yeah
I I can't imagine. It really. I was so glad they talked about this because it really like it blew my mind. Like general public, get a grip. I'm here. I'm realizing it. I'm getting there. Like
right
join me. This is crazy. Like let's all go together
yeah
into
yeah yeah yeah
reality.
yeah
This is beyond. Anyway, so Taz says what they were going to do is they were going to preemptively cut the boards, like the boards where they were going to make a Taz and Bam Bigelow shaped hole in the floor. They were going to preemptively cut the boards. Then at a signal, they were going to be able to like move the boards like a trap door. And like that's how they were going to get through. So like the wood, because there's a cushion there, the wood would be gone. So they would still, the cushion would be there like it was flat, and then they would like go through the
right
cushion because
yeah
the wood would not be supporting it.
hmm
So Bam Bam was concerned. thank God. It was like, what about Taz's head? His head is going to hit the frame. Like, how are we going to clear this thing? Like, I don't know. And this is when Taz, like, I feel so dirty explaining this, but here's like, I'm gonna rip the curtain back like crazy. And to me, I still don't quite understand how they did this,
Mm.
but he said they were fighting outside the ring for a long time, which I was gonna say, like, if you've been watching our show, you know we watched this match with Woody, which is why I almost messaged him today. Maybe I still will to ask his opinion about this, because like we watched them fight outside the ring for a long time. Like we
Yeah.
saw the whole thing, and I was like, oh, so he goes, they're fighting outside the ring for a long time until they get the signal that the
From the
trap door
referee.
is open from the referee.
Did you
Okay,
see
didn't
that in the video?
no, I didn't, because they didn't say from who. Okay, well now I have to go back and watch. I have to go back and watch this whole match
So
at
things
this
like that are
point.
typically going to go through the referee. The referee, like we know, is hooked up to a
A
whoever's
thing.
running the show,
Mm-hmm.
usually. So it's the referee who's going to like be like, okay, like now it's time. Like you're at a like certain minute mark in the match. Like now it's time to like take it outside. So they take it outside, and then once they're fighting, there's this one moment where it looks like Bam Bam's like grabbing Taz like off of like the guardrail or whatever, and the
Mm-hmm.
referee
Mm-hmm.
goes up in like and goes up into like Bam Bam's like ear and is like, and then like they take it into the ring. He drags
Okay, I
Taz
completely
into the
missed
ring.
that.
Yeah,
That's
and then
crazy.
that's only because spend a lot more time watching the referees nowadays than I used to.
Right, because I'm still very much experiencing the wrestling.
Right.
But I want to talk to a referee so bad. I know we've said this before, but like, please, I
Uh,
want to talk to one so bad. They
okay, okay.
know so much. Like, I'm like putting the call out. Like, if anyone knows a referee or is a referee and wants to talk to us, like, please.
Mhm, mhm.
But they get the signal from the referee that they can go back in the ring. And he says, if you watch closely, I have the choke on him. Bam Bam is tapping first, then he puts his hand on the top rope. Under his hand is a little piece of white tape. And that white tape was the measurement to clear my head. Like so that when they go back, he doesn't hit the steel. I still don't really get it.
I think it is like so he from the distance of like wherever hit the tape is to like above his head, um, Taz had to kind of shrink down underneath to that mark on his hand so that he would clear so that they would both clear the
That's
metal
crazy.
frame. So
That's
like the
crazy.
mark is like a visual cue for Taz to be like and then go like
No.
or
That is so
at least that's
crazy.
how I understood it, you know.
That's
So
why I want to go back and watch the match, because I'm like, I'm gonna look for the ref, I'm gonna look for the tape. I'm gonna like
mhm,
I that is so crazy. That's so
mhm.
beyond. I mean, it was crazy before I even knew this information. This makes it more insane to me.
Yeah,
Um, but Taz says we hit that crash mat so hard, obviously. The ring engulfs us and we hear the crowd erupt. I mean, I can't ever stop thinking about it. Like it really is the
mhm.
most insane thing. Like I can't
The
imagine
pop
being
is
there.
crazy. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's crazy. And he goes, my eyes light up because I know we've nailed it. And the first thing Bam Bam does is he rolls over and goes, "Are you okay?" He
Yeah.
goes, and that was Bam Bam Bigelow. Like that's who he was. Like
Mhm.
he before he even enjoyed the moment of like we just literally nailed this stunt. He has to make sure we did, like that I didn't die. Like he's like, "Are you okay?"
Right.
And he goes, then he shakes me and he's like, "We fucking did it."
Right.
We were laughing, and I just like it was this sweet visual where it's like these two humongous men just like sitting in the cradle of the ring hole they've created, just giggling because they've
Right.
nailed it. Like
I love that. I love that
I
so
loved it. He
much.
goes, "We were laughing, we were whatever," and I just, he goes, and the whole place is rumbling. Um, and he waited a minute to like let the crowd be like, what's happening, what's happening, what's happening. Then he crawled out, he gets the pin, and we knew the pop was going to be loud, but I don't know if we knew it was going to be that loud. And it's something I'll never forget as long as I'll live.
Right.
And rightly so.
Right.
Wow. I mean, that is so crazy. I cannot wait to go back and rewatch this match knowing the things that I know now. I mean, even in and of itself, just to even watch that one thing where he throws Taz off like the ramp to get in, and he like falls between the guardrail and
Mhm.
thing. Even
Oh
just
my
to watch that
god.
again, crazy. Um, but they have this thing where like they have audio from Bam Bam after this, and he goes, "Yeah, ECW is definitely extreme. I'm just completely surprised nobody actually died.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean that like whew, like that is really crazy. I think DDP says like he could have broken his neck. He could have literally paralyzed, died, and it was the most incredible stunt in wrestling history.
Right.
Like wild. Um so he's still at ECW. It's very, very extreme. His son Shane says he would have these huge gashes on his head, and he would just put some super glue on it, and we would go have a cheesesteak. And if that's not Philadelphia core, I don't know what is.
Right.
Put some
Just
super glue on my cut, go get a
and
cheesesteak.
yeah. If I've ever heard it, that's it.
And honestly, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. And so then unfortunately though, Dana says, the injuries were the beginning of the end. And his son Shane says he had stenosis, which is, I guess, like I looked this up. I guess it's like the constricting of like the tube of your spine, basically.
Oh,
I think. Hold on, I screenshotted the medical diagnosis.
spinal stenosis.
Yeah, is the abnormal narrowing of a tubular structure such as a blood vessel, canal, foramen, or of an organ such as the spinal canal.
Right.
So it's like it just starts to like choke your spinal cord, from what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in the entirety of his spine, he had crushed discs. He had sections of his back that were just completely fused, which is crazy.
Right.
And he said, and pills allowed him just to move. Like it wasn't
Right.
even like he could move in, but he was kind of in pain. Like he literally couldn't even move without the help of meds. Um, and Scott, his other son, again brings up the fact that if you didn't work, you didn't get paid, and I understand why he felt the need to do it. And Taz says, I saw him struggling a little bit physically, but he hit it really, really well. Like he didn't seem ever like he was high or that he was like out of it, at least at first. And I think that the franchise says that too. Like we wrestled together and I didn't really notice if he was like out of it or not. I didn't really realize how bad it was at first. But again, it's like,
That and he Taz like mentions that he never like points out that like, hey, like this is hurting, like maybe let's not do this, or like it was never a like he never sought to make any kind of accommodations for like whatever pain he was in. He was just kind
mhm.
of like, oh yeah, let's go, and you're like,
Let's do it. Yeah. He was
right.
always ready for anything. But the pills, of course, as they always unfortunately do start taking its toll. And Dana says, he was never, ever, ever aggressive. He was always very respectful. And then out of the blue, he became angry. Then he'd be coherent, then he'd be incoherent. Like, and he would he was in complete denial that he had a problem, and he kept like affirming, like, look, I'm under the care of a doctor, like everything is fine. And she says, this doctor was supposed to help him with the disease he already had and ended up giving him an entirely new one, i.e., his addiction. Um, and this is when she says, his doctor was a fan. And so he would have done anything for Scott, regardless of his license. And he did. Scott was in denial, and so was the doctor. I would call him and say, you are destroying our lives, you are ruining our family. And then Shane's like, and the doctor would go completely undermine my mother and call Bam Bam direct and say, the warden is telling me not to come.
Right.
Could you imagine?
Like where do
Could
you like
you imagine?
who do you like
That
in
enraged
my
me.
marriage? You're
In my
crazy.
house?
You're
In my house?
crazy.
With my man?
Let me find out that you're out here making secret phone calls to my husband
Mm-mm.
behind my back, directly
No.
like countering what I am saying.
Mm-mm.
Let me find that out, please, please. That'll be a cold day in hell. I'm gonna show up right
Woo!
on your front door and be like, "What's up? What's
I'm
good, Miley?
immediately
What's good?"
what's good, Miley? No, swear to God, because I'm immediately reporting you to the DEA. Like
Yo,
I'm immediately I'm gonna go like this. Oh, who was that? Oh, okay. Hello? I'd like
I'd
to
like to
report a
report
crime.
literally, literally,
Le-
literally. I was like, the way,
Immediately anonymously reported to the DEA. Like you have
right?
no idea.
Crazy.
That's crazy. And I'm not saying that's what you should have done. I'm just saying like I
That's
also
what I
too
would
would
have
be
done. I would have
I
flown
would
off
have
the
been
handle.
outraged. Like that's great. Not the warden. You want to see me be the warden?
I was like,
Hmm.
bet, say
Bet. Swear
less.
to God. Mm.
Shoot, I can live up to a nickname. That's fine.
Oh, you listen, you want to name me? Okay.
Shoot,
Then let's do it. Oh my God. I'll take it
I'm.
there.
I'll take that title. Thank
I
you.
will take it there. I will commit to the bit like you
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't believe. Woof.
Amen.
Mm-mm.
Amen.
And she says, I loved her. She was so honest, so outraged, just so disgusted, and she didn't hide that at all. She was like, "No one is paying attention to these doctors. Like, you're a drug dealer. It's a
Mm-hmm.
tragedy. Scott sold his soul for Oxycontins, and he would have stepped over us in the street to get them."
Right.
Oof, mama. And
Mm-hmm.
that is the saddest. That it's just so sad how like it's the classic case of addiction. Like
Right.
how some good people don't even realize they have a problem. They can quit at any time. I have it under control. And then in the meantime, you would literally sacrifice your
And the
entire life and family
and the
for.
thing is just like that's it's just like he's literally being told like by a medical professional that it's fine. You know what I mean? Like
Right. Yeah,
so
it's not even really his fault.
it's not even like well I mean I'm sure like he probably had some semblance of like he was probably taking a lot, but it's like if you have a doctor telling you every step of the way that your behavior is fine,
Mm,
we literally are taught our entire lives to trust doctors. That
it's
is
so true.
like
Except now. Maybe now in this day and age, we're a little bit
maybe
like,
now in this day and age, but this is 1990 whatever.
no, in
So
that time, it's like, what do you know? Like, my doctor told me this is okay.
right. So
So true.
that's what just
Oof.
makes it all the more sad is that like he doesn't realize he has a problem because he's being handheld by a medical professional into his addiction. Like he is literally just being led to it.
Yep.
And that's like so sad.
So sad. And it's a person who's a fan of him and wants to see him
Wrestle.
continue. So he has stake in the game. There's like reasons for him to be a drug pusher because
Right.
he's got stake in the game. But then Dana says, but then I got pregnant
Horrible.
with what'd you say?
Horrible.
All right, Bowen. But then Dana says I got pregnant with Richie, and then come the promises. I'm gonna change, things are gonna be different. I'm gonna XYZ, la la la,
Mm-hmm.
because he had always wanted a daughter his whole life. And that's was like his moment in the sun. Like he'd
Right.
always wanted to have a daughter. And he said he put her, or Dana said he put her to bed every night. He would literally sleep on the floor next to her crib, sing to her every night. Like he was
He wanted to
obsessed
be a
with her.
girl dad.
Girl dad. And honestly, I feel like the super big, like, dudes always want to be a girl dad low key.
Always.
They
I don't
always want to be a girl dad low
know.
key. I mean, I get it. Um, But Richie says every Wednesday my dad would pick me up from preschool in his big red truck. We had a very normal father-daughter relationship. Like to me, he was just my dad. I didn't clock any problems with him. Also, she was very young at the time. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
don't know what you don't know. Um, and again, all his kids say like he was an amazing dad when he was good, but it didn't last forever.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously he was good for a little bit and then he started to slip back. And his son, I think it's Scott, brings this up, and this is such a good point, and I feel like we've touched on this a little bit before. There's no pension in professional wrestling. Like he knew he had to make all the money that he possibly could with the body that he had while
Mm-hmm.
he was able to, because that is the money that was going to sustain his entire family for the rest of their lives.
Right.
That is really crazy.
Mm-hmm.
No, like I gave my life to this and like now I get like a monthly something like when I retire. Like that is really wild.
Mm-hmm.
Like again,
Really
it's one of
wild.
those things that's obvious, but you don't think about it until someone brings it to your attention again. You're like,
But
"Oh my
I don't think that's the case with like professional athletes
well, that's what
either.
I'm saying. Like that's
You know what I mean? Like
messed up."
they like burn through their body and then they're like, see ya.
And and it's obvious, but that's wrong and like really disturbing to be honest, especially all the money that people make off
Off
of
of these
professional
people?
athletes, millions of dollars, millions and millions and millions, a sick amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't even give these people a pension or aftercare for their bodies or like really like long-term care or and literally any sort of anything. You can't do anything.
No, we saw it with Dynamite Kid. They just
I know,
move
shunted
on.
him off. That is so disturbing to me. It's
Mm-hmm.
very disturbing to me. Like, whatever. That's again a whole other
No,
thing.
I fully agree with you. Like it
So
doesn't it really
bothersome.
like is baffling. I mean, granted, like my thing is like if you can give like postal workers like
Well,
for running through their body, you know what I
hmm
mean? Like why can't we like I don't get it.
Yeah. I mean, listen, my dad was a postman his whole life. I know his pension is good.
Right.
And so I'm saying like, and there are people doing backflips or even football players like basically getting hit by a bus 14 times,
Right.
like more than that, like a million times in one game
Right.
for their whole career, and then we're just like, see ya.
Right. It's crazy.
Crazy.
Right.
Really beyond really hate it.
Especially because we know, and especially now, like we know more about all of the like just like insane uh just brain injuries that
The aftermath.
repeated like
Yeah.
head injuries causes, just the like wear and tear on your body, just having like chronic like pains and just ache
Forever. Your whole life.
forever. Yeah, it's crazy. And like I look at I saw this video of like Shawn Michaels like doing like yoga or something. He was like stretching in his like, and he is like talking about it, and he's just like, I have to do this stuff. Like
Yeah.
he's like, I got to do what I wanted for a very long time, but in exchange I sacrificed, a good chunk of my like my body.
Mm-hmm.
So like to just be like functional, I have to do all of this like extra stuff. And that's in 2024 when we know all of this. Like not
What
1990 whatever when we don't have that.
especially like wrestlers are literally telling you this.
Mhm.
Like athletes are telling you this. Like it's not just like a random Joe Schmo off the street. Like,
Mhm.
it's they're saying like my body is broken. And we've seen evidence of it over and over and over again. Like you said, Dynamite Kid, like uh,
The
Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero. Like literally it's endless.
mhm.
Endless. The football players, like it's just crazy. It's there's so much evidence, we know so much, and so we're like, bummer,
Right.
wild.
Mhm.
Just out of pocket, so gross. But
I agree.
anyway, Diamond Dallas Page is the one who ends up bringing Bam Bam Bigelow to WCW. And he's like I said, he said, I never felt like he was under the influence, didn't even process it. Like he really was on regardless. But so many guys died from overconsumption, plain and simple. Like they're like, okay, you take five because three pills stop working, and then you're so out of it, you forget that you took five. So you're like, I guess I'll take five more, and then suddenly you're dead.
Right.
And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
again
And like
crazy
and
to think
like
about.
and you gotta like he's so like blunt about it because it's just like the, these are his friends, like these are the people that he knew and worked with and whatever, and
Yeah,
that is the result that happened over and over and
over and
over
over
again.
again.
So
So
like
true.
you can kind of tell in the way that they like eat, like Taz speaks about it, GDP speaks about it, where it was such a like just pervasive thing that it was just like, how did like this not get addressed?
Yeah. It's
So
just like that's just how it goes. So then like I said, it started to take a toll, and he would travel with the company, but he wouldn't be able to make it to shows or tapings. Like he started missing,
mm-hmm.
work requirements. And then Dana says he became such a liability that they ended up paying him the rest of his contract just to stay home because he could not function. So they basically paid out the rest of his contract. We're like, dude, seriously, get out of here. Like that is beyond. Um, Shane says, when he came home, he was a broken man and he needed pills just to get up. But unfortunately, it really started to dull his sense of person, of like who he was.
Mm-hmm.
And the producer, the interviewer, whomever asks, like, do you know, just like a casual estimate of like how many oxys he was taking a day? And he goes, 15 to 20 easily.
He's like
And the
a
guy's like,
day.
a day? And he goes, yeah, like easily light work, like that's just a normal day. That is so crazy,
Bonkers. That's bonkers.
wild. So then this is when he ends up having the incident with Richie that we talked about in the beginning, where he's like nodding out in the car, and she has this emotional moment where she, I guess, like wrote a paper about it in the 8th grade when she was older. And she's like, I literally read it last night before we did this interview because I just wanted to like kind of refamiliarize myself with it, and I'm reading it now, and it's like really dawning on me like how hurt I am. Like he literally was like nodding out because he was like messed up
I
on
yeah.
drugs like while I'm in the car with him and I'm like his child. Then she goes, and it's like, and she's processing this in like real time. She's like, I
Right.
literally read this for the first time last night, and I am just understanding that he was high when
Yeah.
I was in the car. And like I'm very like she was it was very crazy. First of all, I also want to mention she is so beautiful.
Mhm.
Their whole family is gorgeous. And like
Right.
they were so vulnerable, and she was like, I'm just like really processing like right now how upset that makes me. And that's crazy.
Mhm.
And so at that time, after he is pulled over and arrested, he is charged with endangering the welfare of his daughter. And I think that's like
Such a
it's
gut punch considering how
yes.
much he wanted, like, how much he valued being a father. Like,
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
I think that, like, really was, like, a low like, just a bottom point as far as his life goes because, like, throughout this entire thing, it is from everybody, it is bandied, like, he wanted to be a father, he was such a good father, he, like, really was there for his kids, and, like, to ultimately have your addiction like let them down in that way
Mm-hmm.
is hard. That is a hard pill to swallow.
Literally.
Right.
And I think too, because he was in a like diluted sense, like doing it for his kids, because he was taking
Right.
pills to wrestle to take care of his family.
Right.
It just like compounds into something like
It's such a vicious
so
cycle. Yeah.
yes, so it's just like beyond reckoning with in like this
Mhm.
lifetime. It's crazy. Um and Dana, I guess, gives him an ultimatum like, you need to get help or you need to go. And he basically didn't see that he had a problem, so he decided to leave, which
Right.
is, again, like so upsetting.
Mhm.
And he ends up moving to Florida,
Right.
as one does. And his son Shane, this really broke my heart too, says, I went down spring break to Florida it was my senior year of college, and I was going down like I said with friends, but I really took the opportunity because I wanted to try and find my dad. Like I hadn't seen
Mhm.
him. So I get down there and I call him, and his girlfriend answers, the audacity,
Uh-huh.
and says like, "Oh, he can't see you. Like he's not up for it. Like he's not well, he can't see you." And then as soon as I land back in Jersey, I get the call from my dad like, "Oh, so sorry that happened. So sorry that happened." And he goes, and I really aired him out. Like I was like, I told him how I was feeling, how upset I was, how hurt I was by this. Like and I like hung up the phone, and then he died
Yeah, 3 weeks later.
3 weeks later. That was like their last conversation,
Mhm.
which is devastating.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
it's crazy. My friend and I talk about this a lot, that it's one of those things where it's like you sometimes live in a place where you're so scared to say the things that you feel because you're like, what if this is our last conversation? But you
Mhm.
have to try and like move past that, because I also you don't want to like live in that place where like you don't know how I'm actually really feeling about what's happening.
Right.
But then you all like it's just
Yeah.
and you have to like reckon with the fact that like you were honest and you said things that were really on your heart and were important to you to release, and you were able to actually say them to the person who was hurting you before they died. But
Right.
also that to be the last thing that you said to them
Is rough. Yeah.
is crazy. But it's like, was it better that I was able to get it off my heart like to you before you died, or does it hurt because that's the last impression you have of our relationship? Like
Right.
it's
I
so
don't yeah.
crazy. That's like
And no, yeah. And that's again, and it's just such a sad thing because you're just like it's just so like he took such pride in being a father. So like to find out that he was just kind of like letting his kids down like at the end was like rough.
yeah, but also like when you moved to Florida, you literally left them. Like it's just like you have to reckon with that and be like, what's you have to understand like there's something wrong here.
Right.
But either way, Dana says she was teaching, and Bam Bigelow's brother called her at school and was just like, he's gone. And she said he was hysterically crying and just said, he's gone, like,
Mhm.
uh, Scott's dead. And she just like runs out of the school, like hysterical, like very upset. Shane was at college. Like I said, it was his senior year when he went to spring break, and then 3 weeks later he died. And said his dad's childhood friend like called and told him, which is also crazy.
Mhm.
And he was basically just he goes, it was that I was walking across the quad and he told me, and it was that moment where like time stood still. Like it felt like I was
Frozen,
completely
yeah.
frozen in time, and everyone was like moving like around me like so fast, and I was just like
Hmm.
stuck. He goes, and I was so numb. DDP is crying while he's talking about it. He says, it just completely rocked me. It was so shocking. Taz says, I immediately thought of his family because, he loved them so much. Like he talked about them all the time. He was such a family man,
Hmm.
and I immediately thought of them. And Dana says, it was an overdose. She goes, they say it's an accidental overdose, but I personally don't believe accidental and overdose should be in the same sentence. It's like, oh, what you like, ooh, accidentally took like too many pills. You shouldn't have been taking them in the first place. Like, what have you been accidentally taking too many pills for a really long time?
Yeah, yeah,
Which is a crazy statement to make, but also like, that's the truth to
right.
her. Like, especially to her. Like, she's like, you've been accidentally dosing yourself, quote unquote, for
A long time.
a
Long.
long time.
Right,
So he died on January 15th, 2007 at the age of 45.
right. So
That
crazy.
is stupid young.
Stupid. So stupid. That
So stupid.
yeah, no, that's bonkers.
That's just crazy. I mean, again, his daughter was 3. Like
Hmm.
the thing he'd been waiting for his whole life, he experienced for 3 years, basically.
If
His
that.
daughter. Yeah, that's crazy. And then it makes me really sad too, because Dana's like, I didn't grieve. There was none for me. I was scrambling. I had kids. They couldn't see me break down. They couldn't see me weak. And that's all I became was a provider. And that's what I'm reckoning with now. Because she, I guess,
Had to take on the provider role, like because she
yes.
couldn't. Yeah, that's got to be so difficult.
Yeah.
To be like one in that position where like you're also very hurt by the decisions of this person,
Yeah.
and they're no longer here, which has now robbed your children of a father, and more so than they have already been robbed.
Hmm.
And then you have to somehow bury that for yourself, at least while they're, present and around, to get them through it. And then you're also taking on the role of the other parent as well.
Yep.
So kudos to her because that sounds like so difficult.
So crazy. And yeah, it's hard because also like they were friends growing up. They were high school sweethearts. Like she'd
They,
known him her whole life.
yeah,
So it's again, it's not even just like husband, father of my kids. It's like someone I've literally grown up with, like, and now I have to experience like what it's like to I've had you more in my life than not in my life, and now I have to
hmm
learn what that's like. Um, and Richie gives her mom a lot of credit. She was like, it was hard, and I used to really villainize her because I just was young and I was just like, I want to see my dad. I want to see my dad. And there were obviously, now that I'm older, reasons why she didn't let us see what was
yeah,
going on because
right,
like and she had to be the villain. Like she had to be
right,
the person that's like, no, you can't because you don't understand like what and like
hmm
what you're gonna witness. Like if I let you like if we go to Florida and like
right.
see your
And like,
dad. Like
kids
she
love
goes,
to kids never understand that. Don't want to hear it.
no, of
Don't
course
don't
not.
understand it. Like it's that they never want to swallow that pill. No,
No,
like no kid from their parent goes like, "Oh no, like you just don't understand." Like, you know what I mean? Like that's never like, and
right.
like so you can see how that would put a strain on their relationship if they're constantly like, and and deservedly asking about their father, and she
Mm-hmm.
has to be like, "No, like he's literally too messed up to go see."
Yeah.
And that's crazy.
And yeah, she had to take that on for years, for
Yeah.
like 20 years basically, until her kids were like, at least Richie was old enough to be like, oh, wait a minute. Like now I
Hmm.
understand. Um, and that's hard. That's really, really hard. And then Shane Douglas, the franchise says he must have really believed he didn't have a problem because the fact that he never once reached out to anyone
Hmm.
and said anything about what he was experiencing. He must have really believed that he
Had it on lock. Yeah.
had it on under control and that he was able to like get out of it at any time. And that's like really scary. And his son says, I think this is interesting too, when we've talked about this before. His son says after the fact, it was always just about honoring the legacy of Bam Bam. And so I never really got to stop and acknowledge my own pain. And I
Hmm.
don't remember who we were talking about, but it's like let it was like let the families grieve. Like,
Yeah.
why are you like, let the like, give us some space, like, to let the families just
Mhm.
experience the loss that they had instead of immediately being like, tributes, things, like, whatever, and I understand why we have to do that because they meant something to other people, to fans, to organizations, and I understand,
Right.
but it's also like there are real people being affected by this, and, like, that really
Mhm.
broke my heart, like, that made me so sad. I mean, he was in
Mhm.
college, like,
Right.
wild.
Right. And like and the thing it's just it's to because they have to deal because of the nature of his death, there's a lot that they have to just like confront and like
Yes.
accept and forgive, not forgive, whatever, however they want to play it.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of like just like intricacies about him and his issues that like are just really difficult without media, without any
Yeah.
fanfare, without like most people that have to experience those things struggle with these things and like
Yes.
coming to terms with, their relationships with people with addiction or people who have passed and blah blah blah. So when you have that entire challenge in front of you. You're young, so you're most likely ill-equipped to take on the challenge. And then the entire time you have to basically hear everybody else forever just talk about what a like great hero, immaculate human, and
Mm.
like which is, which in a lot of cases, is true, but the duality of this whole situation is he hurt very real people. Like
Yep.
those kids have to reconcile with like probably had to deal with like addiction, like learning about addiction at a ridiculously young age, have learning to deal with death at a ridiculously young age, and
Mhm.
so it's like those things are difficult. So to all the while be like memorializing this person over and over and over and over again, it's like how are they supposed to reconcile those not so positive feelings
Yep.
about their father and the very real things that happened that affected them if the kind of public perception is just kind of just this kind of like in memoriam, like he's dead so we can never like besmirch the name.
Right. Mhm.
And so
Totally.
that's got to be such a weird thing to kind of have to try and navigate because like
Yeah.
literally like wrestling fans all over the world, other wrestlers, blah blah, are like just praising this dude that really hurt you,
Mhm.
and like yes, they speak fondly about their father, um but I imagine that's after years of reconciling with this stuff.
Yes.
um
100%.
so
100%. And I think that's also like I feel like what Dana was kind of saying with like accidental overdose because I feel like there's this feeling of like well it was an accident. So he didn't mean to do it. And like obviously he didn't mean to do it.
right.
But like also it almost like alleviates it like lifts and this is like a very nuanced situation like drug addiction any type of addiction is a very case by case like
Hmm.
situation but I think like it alleviates some sort of like well it was a complete accident. He didn't mean to do it, even though he'd been addicted for many, many years and had already inflicted a lot of damage before his
Right.
death.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it's just an insane situation.
Right.
But Taz mentions too, it's like you're making a living for your family and you never see them. You're putting your whole body on the line and you're just like completely damaged. You get addicted to drugs. Like it's a horrible, like it ends up being
Right.
this like you said, a vicious cycle. This and then this really like this was amazing and like crazy and so good. So the producer asks Dana, if Scott was here, what would you say to him? No hesitation, no thought. She just goes, you motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like, and with her finger, she's like, you motherfucker. She goes,
So Jersey,
and then
so Jersey.
so,
So
uh,
the way
uh,
that I go, that's right.
that's right.
That's right.
That's right.
Absolutely. You go, you motherfucker.
You
Like,
mother
which is fair. Fair.
there.
Totally fair. No one can tell this. Like, my thing is like I will never tell the people involved in these stories, scenarios, how to react.
Never.
How, because that is entirely
Amen.
them. That is entirely what they are entitled to. And like, and she, she like backtracks a little bit, but like, but then she like, really like heads it home. She's like, after she's like, no, I'm like kidding, but like after years of therapy, like I would be like, hey, like I understand, like this was not super in your control. There was a lot of, contributing factors, blah 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 blah. He's like, but I would have called him a motherfucker first.
Period.
uh, and you know
I,
what? And that is that Jersey energy. That's that beast from the East energy. You know what
I'm
I mean?
saying the
And she's
real
like,
beast from the east was Dana this whole time.
the
Spoiler
whole
alert.
time, like, and she goes, and she goes, and he would expect me to call him that.
Yes.
Like,
That was
and
the best
that's,
part.
yeah, she's like, he would expect nothing less from me, and
Yeah.
so that's how I would leave it. And you're like, fair, you know what,
Amen.
totally valid.
Valid. This whole episode was so Jersey coded. I've been really trying not to mention it, but like this especially was like, yeah, like you motherfucker. Like, oh,
Yeah,
so
so
Jersey
good,
coded.
so
But
good.
so good. I love her so much. She literally goes, yeah, but through years of therapy, I've learned to like accept who you are, whatever. But
Hmm.
and she makes a good point too. She says, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm gonna be a drug addict today.
Right.
You wake up every morning and you think today is gonna be different. Today I'm going to change. But I would call him a motherfucker first, just because he would expect that from me. Again, his kids say, I can't fault him for what happened. I understand. Like, but they're like the most like I know they all went to therapy. Like if
No,
Dana
they
went to
had to
therapy,
have.
all of them kids went to therapy. I just and like I respect it.
Hmm.
Um and Dana, real one for this. She takes her name basically out of like any royalty checks that she gets from Bam Bam Bigelow, and so it just goes to her children.
Hmm.
So all royalty checks go directly to his kids, and she says so in death he is still supporting them.
Right.
And like
I
she
love
is
that.
so real for that.
Such a
She is
boss
so
move.
real for
Such a
that.
boss
But
move.
because she's like, I'm making my own income, like, and he always loved his kids. Like he always loved his kids, and this is the way he can still love and support his kids even
Hmm.
from
After he's
beyond.
gone. Right.
That is so so crazy. Bam Bam, there's an audio from him, and he says the best big man in the business, the guy that was doing cartwheels, moonsaults, drop kicks, and the things they never ever seen another big man do before, and that's how I want to be remembered. And the end of it is a quote from Dana, and she says, he was a great person and how he lived and all the wonderful things that he did for people and the great father that he was should be what he is remembered for, not how he died, because that's a terrible story. But he left such a legacy. He was the 1%.
Mm, love that. Love that. Love that. And
God,
like, it just like, I loved this one for a
loved
multitude of reasons.
so
One,
many.
even though these stories typically tend to be a bit of a downer, it is the dark side.
Right? The
But
dark side of the ring. We all know this.
but I love that, he's from our neck of the woods. I love that you
True.
got a little bit of a sneak peek, like behind the curtain of a match that we have really dissected at this point.
Yes, and I'm okay
Um,
with that.
and I also love that, like, as much as like horrible as a lot of these like stories are, you really do get a sense of the resiliency of people,
Mm-hmm.
because some of the people in these like stories really get put through the ringer, and just
Yes.
by proxy, and that is, um that it's the nature of humanity. It happens. But the way that they had all of that happen and had to, go on with their lives after the fact, and still want to
Mm-hmm.
come and do something like this so that other people are made aware of the things that wrestlers have to go through. Like, these are
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
his story is not uncommon, and that's what we're
Yep.
finding more and more.
Yep.
um so the more that we can kind of uncover these stories, and the more that people who have been affected, God forbid we ask them to do one more painful thing, but we bring them out, and
Yeah.
they come, and for the most part they are very graceful about it, and they're, um they really go they give me a little bit of hope for humanity that like even if it like all goes to shit, there
Mhm.
are people who have survived and gone on to the other side and
It's so
made
true.
lives for themselves and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But like, damn, like
Oof.
the resiliency of these people is really truly amazing. And like, will me and you will probably be the advocates for this forever. It's like the only opinion, like we're just two randos who want
Yep.
to learn about these people.
Yep.
The only opinions that really matter are the people that are directly affected by these scenarios and these other people.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day,
Yep.
we are just two weirdos shouting into the void. the
So
the
true.
the people that had to live through these really unfortunate circumstances and what they have to say on the other side of it are really what I am interested in and interested in sharing.
Yes.
So,
And I'm grateful that they are willing to share also.
exactly. But yeah,
I mean, yeah, again, we've said that a million times and I'll always say it. I'll always stand by that as a hill I will 100% die on. But yeah, this was honestly like it was kind of I don't want to say out of left field, but we were like, yeah, let's do a Bam Bam episode. It wasn't like super duper planned, but it was one of my favorites that I've ever watched. I mean,
hmm
again, like it's close to home. It was just a beautiful story, even though, like you said, it has a very tragic ending. But the people that talk about this stuff, like you said, I mean, you encapsulated it so perfectly. But they really do teach like me patience. I'm like, oh God, I can really like. There's so many things I could
right.
chill out about, like,
hmm
and not in like a numbing way or like a diminishing kind of way. Just like literally, like wow, like
You're gonna get through it. Like you're
yes, like
gonna
I'm so grateful for this show and not to like wax poetic about like anything, but like I'm so grateful for this because it really is like people letting you into that side, being so vulnerable and just being willing to
hmm
talk about these things is really incredible. And we're very, very grateful people.
hmm
So yeah, like thank you. Thank you to the Dark Side of the Ring and Bam Bam Bigelow's family and anyone else who listens to this. We are very, very grateful. And thank you for watching this episode of the New Wrestling Podcast After Dark. We are so grateful to you for joining us. And we will see you next week. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about yet, but we'll let you know when we know.
Yeah. So the regular podcast episode on Thursday will be the In Your House a Cold Day in Hell pay-per-view, so look out for that.
Thrilling.
But
Hmm.
as far as next week goes, After Dark, I'll brainstorm. So no
Yeah,
teaser for you yet, but
I have some. I like saw some other Dark Side of the Rings I'd want to watch, but I need to know if
hmm,
like they're spoiler.
what
We'll
are
see. We'll talk. We'll talk. We'll talk.
which ones did you see? I wanna know. Maybe we'll decide on live on the
I
pod.
kind of want to watch the Jake the Snake one, but I don't because we haven't seen him in a while on the show. So I don't know if he's gone, if he's like I'm not
hmm
sure, but I'm so curious about that man and that snake. Like I have so
Okay,
many questions.
I'm down.
But there's a few that I was like perusing and I was like, maybe, I don't know.
hmm
What's his name from ECW who like really used to
New Jack.
yes, there's an episode about him. Yeah, I don't know, there's a few, but I guess we'll discuss and we'll let you know.
All right, all right. Thanks, guys. We'll catch you next time.
We will see you there.
Bye.